Welcome to hobbyhottips.com. Today we're going to do some sculpting green stuff on a Dooms Day Ark. So we're going to roll out some green stuff. We're using Vaseline to put on a push template, and we're going to push out, it's something we call a scorpion tail. It's kind of like a tip of an arrow, and then there's two orbs in the middle. So we're going to scrape up this form and then do some more sculpting, put some details on it, and then we will super glue the sculpture to a Doomsday Ark. It gives it some nice details around the part, I call it the carriage, because it's kind of like the carriage of the Doomsday Ark where the pilot sits. So let's scrape up the remainder and let's get to sculpting. So what we're going to do is push it down onto the acrylic so it's easier to sculpt, and now we're using a soft sculpting tool. That's kind of the pin tool. It comes to a point. And we're making round shapes. We're going to paint them like orbs. The Necrons have green orbs that show throughout their sculptures or throughout their models. And we're just going over these details again and again because, as we mentioned before, that green stuff has a tendency to expand as it hardens. So we're kind of just going over the forms again and again, getting more depth. So that we have some nice hard edges to paint. So now we're going to go ahead and put the green stuff on the Doomsday Ark. This Doomsday Ark is magnetized. We'll show you a video of how we did that as well. But right now we're just trying to do some finishing touches with some green stuff. So we put it down, and now we're going to use the soft sculpting tools to put in more details. Now what we're going to try to do, there's a steel tool that we like to use too, and you can tell that it has harder edges because we're trying to make this look like metal, not the orbs but all the other parts. So we're going to try to give all the edges a very hard and sharp turns. That's a chisel soft edge sculpting tool that we're going to use to smooth out the top side of the sculpture, and then we'll do the orbs with the pin, and then we'll come in with the steel tool again just to go over the sides of it to give it the sharp edges. That's a rounding tool. We haven't used that on our videos before, but for the orbs it's kind of nice for the top part of the orb to give it more of a bend. So you'll see us going over that once in a while after we use the pin tool, and then we'll come back with the rounding tool. And then that's the chisel again. So we're basically doing that over and over again so that we can get the right type of texture to our sculpture. So we're using the chisel to flatten out the edges to make it look more like metal. Then we're coming back in with the soft pin tool to make the orbs stand out more round. And then we'll use the smooth steel tool to give us the harder and harsher lines to make it look more like metal. So now we're coming back in, trying to put some more detail in the sculpture. So we had some big lines in the middle, or big pieces of material in the middle, so we wanted to kind of break it up and put lines. So that's what we're doing with the hard metal sculpting tool. And then once we put those in, you notice that it kind of rounds out the green stuff, and we're just flattening it down. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a spine running across that same part that we just laid the other sculpture on. So we're using this push template. We put Vaseline on it. We're using the hobby knife to push it down, and you can see that the spine is starting to come up. We're going to scrape that off and get to sculpting. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut the sections of the spine out, so that way we can make room for every individual bone. We're doing that with the hobby knife, and we'll see that we're just cutting each line where we want it to separate so it looks like it's a boned spine. And now we're going to use the soft sculpting tool to kind of push down and around the edges so that those little tips of bone actually look like they're poking out. And then we're going to go in between the lines that we cut with the hobby knife and kind of press down so that there's a nice texture and it looks more spine-like. So we're going to lay down some super glue, and now we're going to apply it on the Doomsday Ark. So we're going to scoop it up, and we're going to put it right behind that scorpion tail, and it looks really nice. It comes together pretty good. Now with the hard metal tool or the knife. Either one would work, but we're just going to push it down into the super glue. That way we know that it's firmly stuck to the model. And then, like with most of our sculptures, we're just going to go over the fine details again. Sometimes when we transport it, we lose some of that, or we might get fingerprints on it. We're going to fast forward this really fast because this is pretty much covered in the first part of the video. We're going to put another scorpion tail on the other end, but we're going to have it kind of curving the other way. So we use the push template, cut it out, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put orbs in there, and we're actually going to do more sculpting on the acrylic sheet before we place it on the model. And it kind of just depends on what you want to do. If your model has a lot of hard places to reach and you'd rather do the sculpting on the acrylic, that's probably a better idea to do more of the detail on the acrylic. But if it's pretty out in the open and you feel more comfortable doing your sculpting on the model, then by all means do that too. That way you don't lose as much detail when you're transferring it over onto the model. So as you can tell, it's kind of sped up a little bit faster because it's a little bit repetitive, but once it's done being sculpted, we're putting down the super glue and applying it to the model. And there it is. Please stay tuned. We're going to show how we actually magnetize this model, a step-by-step video instruction. We're also going to show how to paint this model once we have the other videos done and published. So if you like this, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and stay tuned for some more awesome videos.